Mike is looking crazy, and we can put up Mike versus, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this, but shout out to Fight Hype. I'm giving Fight Hype all the credit. Looks like Roy's working on his speed. So we don't got to show too much of that. Looks like Mike's working on his traditional power and speed. That's just what he was born with. He's a naturally bigger man. Everybody knows how I feel about this fight. It doesn't matter. Everybody thinks that Roy Jones Jr. is taller. He's not. He's maybe a half an inch taller than Mike Tyson. He's not that tall. He's never been a tall guy. He may look tall on camera, but he's really not a tall guy. He's average height, 5'10", maybe with his boxing shoes on, maybe in his prime, he was, 5'11", but he was never over 6 foot. He's not hovering over Tyson. So, Tyson is infamous for stopping guys his size, period. Like he's only, in his career, before he had any major losses or anything like that, he went the distance with people who, like Mitch Green, people who were 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". He went the distance with those guys. Anybody else that was close to his height, it was over. It wasn't even close because their arms are just as short. They're not able to keep him off with their jab. That's the reason why he had issues with a Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas like 6'3", 6'4". That's the reason why he had issues with, Lennox Lewis and some other fighters later on. And that's the reason why he didn't knock out Mitch Green. He went the distance. He may have beat him in the street, but he went the distance with him. And everybody says, Mike knocked out everybody. Yeah, but if you go back and look at his record, anybody that was that tall, about 6'3", 6'4", he went the distance with. He wasn't knocking out. Let me take this off of here. And please don't be on. Yeah, that's fine. You know what? Let me not put that because I don't want YouTube saying anything. So in fact, we will go to my channel, your channel. We will just post a video. We will post this is what we post episode. Here we go. This is episode 14, Golden Boy. I can post this. Okay, perfect. There we go. Yeah, go check out my other episode. Go check out episode 14. I'm still repping this stuff, still repping the humble law and service, you know what I mean? This way I don't get into any YouTube trouble because I want to be able to monetize this podcast. So again, all that boxing content that you saw, that was credit to Fight Hype, and I'll put that in the description below. But yeah, we know what Mike is training for. What I see Roy training for, I mean, he's training with all these other guys. I want to see Roy by himself. He's training with these other guys hitting but to me, that's a distraction. There's not too much training footage of Roy, but from what I know, Roy in his prime, he was training with his father and there wasn't too many people around. So I don't know why he's still I don't know how serious he's taking because you see Mike is by himself. But there's nobody else in the gym with Mike, period. And you see Booker T, and I don't blame Booker T. Booker T has a podcast, and let me get into my notes here. Yeah, Booker T, he voiced his concern for this fight, and this isn't even a fighter. He's a wrestler, and that is no joke. Let me get my cord. Charge my laptop. He's a wrestler, and he's big. Booker T's like 6'4", 6'5", maybe even bigger than that, 250, maybe even slimmed down to like 230s, but he's huge. He's a big man. And even he's scared for Roy, like the rest of us. The fans want to see it, but I don't think anybody's understanding. I don't think the matchmakers are understanding. I don't think anybody's really understanding how bad this can go for Roy Jones Jr. I mean, it's a serious fight. And Mike Tyson is training his ass off, and now he's had even more time to train. And so does Roy, and you've seen in the content, in the video, you've seen Roy working on his speed, but none of that, we haven't seen Roy spar. We haven't seen Tyson spar either. But Tyson's fighting a little man, an extremely little man compared to him. Mike Tyson was bigger than Roy Jones when he was 16 years old. When he was fighting, he's never fought, and put it like this, Mike Tyson has never fought in any other weight class. Mike Tyson's technically bigger than Evander Holyfield. He's technically bigger than Evander Holyfield, because Evander Holyfield started at cruiserweight. So a more fair fight would be Evander Holyfield versus Roy Jones Jr., because at least Roy finished his career at cruiserweight, but he's not a bigger man, and he's known to get knocked out. And as this fight gets closer, I'm extremely, like, not terrified, but I'm really worried, because none of that speed stuff is going to matter. You hitting that bag, you hitting the mitts with the guy. You guys should be working on conditioning for his neck. That's the biggest thing that they should be working on. His conditioning for his neck, and working on Roy Jones Jr. taking blows. That's what they should be working on. And a lot of fighters, will train like that if they know what type of fight that they're about to be in. If you think that you're going to be able to keep Mike Tyson off of you with them shots, it's not happening. This is a guy who's only been hit by, 200 plus pound men his entire life. There's nothing that you can do. Like, there's nothing that you can do to keep Mike off of you. If this wasn't a guy who got knocked out, like if this was like not an event. Well, Evander Holyfield is training. Prime example. Okay, if this one is an Evander Holyfield, I wouldn't worry, because Evander Holyfield's not too much bigger than Mike Tyson. If this was an Evander Holyfield, if this was a Riddick Bowe, if this was a James Toney, these guys don't get knocked. Nobody wants Lennox Lewis to come back, but I'll get into that subject later. But if this was any of those guys, Antonio Tarver, perfect prime example. If this was an Antonio Tarver, right? If this was an Antonio Tarver, he's not known for getting knocked out. Period. He's not known for getting put to sleep. And you know what I mean? That's a better fight. I wish Mike had to pick that fight. I would have respected that fight. They both got a chance of beating each other in that fight. Like, for real, for real. An Antonio Tarver training really has an opportunity to beat a Mike Tyson these days. That's a fact. And real boxing guys know that. Like, we know when we see Roy, we're like, nah, he gets knocked out too much. But an Antonio Tarver, he don't get knocked out like that. He may get beat. He got beat by Bernard Hopkins. He got smoked. But still, he can still hold his own. He's still a big man. He can still, you know what I mean? He has a great jab and he's southpaw. And I think that he was one of the fighters who was avoided. I think him, and I'm pretty sure out of all these fighters, Vitaly and Vladimir Klitschko were called, because it's a Legends League. So Mike and Roy are starting it off, but I can guarantee you Mike is going to be fighting a lot of the legends. We might see a Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis 2. I hope we do. None of them want Lennox to come back. I'm going to say that again. None of them want Lennox Lewis to come back. Now, Holyfield will fight Lennox 5 days a week, 7 days a week. Probably not on Sundays because he's a really religious man. But Evander Holyfield will fight Lennox Lewis 7 days a week, probably 6. Mike Tyson's not fighting him again. And if he does, he may fight him again under these circumstances, but he's not going to fight him that many times. I can guarantee you, Lennox Lewis, if there's a list for Mike Tyson, because Mike Tyson's going to lead all this Legends League. So if there's a list, he's on the end of his list. Him and Vladimir Klitschko are on the end of his list. But the thing with Vladimir is, Vladimir gets knocked out. Vladimir gets dropped, knocked out. He's the youngest of those legends. He's the youngest. I don't even think he's even eligible for the Hall of Fame because he hasn't been retired that long. Or if he has been retired, it's just now coming. So technically he could probably fight in the Legends League because he's been retired for over 5 years. But these are all fights that I want to see. Hopefully we get them. We're getting Roy and Mike. I think Mike is going to destroy Roy Jones Jr. He might, I don't see Roy ever getting sanctioned for a fight again. I hope this fight goes 8 rounds and Roy survives the whole 8 rounds so Roy can move on to live another day. But you're 50-something years old and you're about to take punishment for 8 rounds. These 8 rounds can change Roy's life moving forward. Roy is articulate now. Roy is not too damaged from any of the damage that he took back in the day. But I give you guys a prime example who's no longer here with us, Roger Mayweather. We saw Roger Mayweather get knocked out a few times in his career, but we saw how fast he was training Floyd, and then all of a sudden, all of the damage that he took in his previous career caught up to him. And I'm telling you, if Roy Jones Jr. doesn't stop, it's going to happen to him. He's going to hit about 57, 58, 59, 60, and then all of a sudden he's going to change. You already see it happening with James Toney. Go watch James Toney talk. He's got a bunch of new interviews. Great man, and I'm glad that he's teaching a lot of people his next, teaching a lot of people his moves, but